All right, we are here with Whitney Quisenberry. Thank you very much for joining me. And my first question to you is, why is it so hard for people to sponsor user experience research?
Okay, so you sent me this question in advance, so I've actually been thinking about it. I think there's 4 things. I think one is that if you're a project manager, you're being pushed to do more, faster, cheaper, all the time. And so you come up and you say, hey, I have this new thing to do, and by the way, it takes some time. And it has to be fitted in the right place, and it's going to change your process. And you go, yeah, I don't think so. So I think there's part of it just that it's new. And the other thing is that if you've never done it before, then you're going to change your whole process and add budget and add people and add time for what's it going to give you. And then I think we actually play a part in that as well, we UXers, because we tend to say, let's do some UX, let's do something big, let's do lots of stuff, we'll go out and do 50 people, we'll do a world tour, and we let it grow instead of keeping it small and tight. So I think it's just things that are new are hard to work into processes.
Yeah, I agree. I always think that, I always say to people who ask me about that, about usability testing, that the simplest usability testing, it's always, I don't know, for people who first hear about it, it's a project.
Right.
And I'm like, if you call it a project, you failed already.
Yeah.
It should be a very small deal, not a big deal.
Right. That's why walk-up surgery is so exciting, that it actually seems to work, right, that you get people in. And the other is, I just say, well, if you're talking to people at all, here's 3 more questions to ask. Instead of demoing it, get them to try it. You're doing the same thing. It's the same amount of time, just do it a little differently. I mean, I love Whitney. Do you remember Whitney Hess's column on you're not doing UX if? And it was basically, you're not doing UX if you're not talking to people. It seems to me that getting over that hurdle is the hardest thing. All the rest is just, getting better at it.
Yep. Any questions for me?
So I work outside of an organization, right?
Yep.
So by the time someone calls me, they've already decided they want to do something. Maybe they don't know what they want to do. But you work inside an organization. So 2 things have happened. One is they've decided that you should be in that organization.
Yep.
But they haven't gone and said, and here's exactly how you work. What do you think the differences are between trying to solve this problem from the inside and trying to solve it from the outside?
I mean, you said it. When people come to you, they already want some kind of research based on, things they heard about you or about research. I'll tell you about my first day at Google.
Okay.
So I knew which team I'm going to join. So I sat down with my manager, expecting all kinds of expectations, and then she told me, well, I don't have much to tell you. You're a user experience researcher.
Go find someone.
You know who you're going to work with. Go figure it out.
When I was in China for user-friendly, I think maybe the second time, these 3 young women came up to me and they said, we have a problem. We need to ask you a question. We didn't want to ask in class, but we're very young. And our boss told us we have to go interview everybody in the company to find out what they need in this program. But we're like the most junior, and we need to talk to people who are very senior, and they won't talk to us. What do we do?
I mean, for me, it's very bottom up. I mean, I don't even try to get access to the higher ups. Right. I think the most important people are the people in your level.
Right.
The software engineers, the product managers.
These were their users. These were really the users.
The users of my research.
No, the users of the product they were working on. Right?
Okay.
So we said, well, what if you ask them to teach you? Right? So I think instead of saying, how do we go force someone to do something they're not prepared to do for cultural reasons, for social reasons, for whatever, for process reasons, figure out what they might do and turn that into a research event.
Yeah. Well,
I have no idea if it worked, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, here what I found is that it's a machine that its wheels are already rolling. I didn't have to, as I did in several organizations I worked for. I didn't have to fight. I didn't have to prove a point or prove that it's important to have me here or important to listen to me. of course, no, I mean, nothing's perfect. I am being challenged by smart people who are interested in what I do and want to get the benefits out of research. So it's not that they always listen, they always agree with what I want to do or with the results that I bring. But I think it's a very different level of work.
Right, because it's different. I mean, teaching someone how to spell the word is different than teaching them how to choose the exact right shade of meaning of the word.
Yeah. But still, I mean, they always benefit, the most basic research that I can do. And some people, not everybody, but some people have a hard time accepting user research, the research that is more on the exploratory side of things.
I think I had this vision when I started in this field that there was a big hurdle and you had to get over that hurdle and then everything would be fine. And what I see is that it's a constant series of hurdles that are about where you are, where the project is, where the person you're working with is, where the company is, where the world is. And that we keep moving, every time we get to here, we move the bar a little bit, we move the bar a little bit further.
Yep. I wanted to ask you about our methods. So I want to read the question because I thought about it. So many people, UX or non-UX, talk about methods when they discuss problem solving. Personally, I think methodologies or methods are important. And I also think it's important to discuss research questions. I believe we confuse people when we talk about our methods and not focus on first identifying what is it that they want to learn. And I have two questions for you. Okay. First of all, what do you think about that? And second is, what is most interesting for me, what are the three most important questions product development people want to answer with research, with UX research?
Well, I think the first thing is yes. I mean, absolutely. Even in academic social research, they hammer into students that you have to understand your research question. That if you don't know what question you're answering, then none of the rest of it makes sense because you've done a lot of activities, but you haven't figured something out. And a method is really just a way of answering questions. So card sorting is a way of trying to get at how do people group things. And that's a way of getting at how should we organize the program, which might be a way, how should we organize menus, but it also might be how should we reconstruct the flow of how we put things together in a different way to help people do their job better. So if we keep coming back to what's the real question, Joanne Hackos, yes, it was Joanne Hackos, has this exercise she did where she was talking about a microwave of an interface and what's the goal for the user, what's the goal of the user, and she finally kept pushing the class and she said, no, the goal is to eat hot food. Right? The goal is not to punch buttons on the front of the thing. Well, the goal is to eat hot food. And you have to keep coming back to what the real goals are. And if you do the same thing with research methods, what are you really trying to learn? Then I think the method comes out.
Yeah.
It just seems obvious. So what do people want to learn? I think most of all, developers are craftspeople. Right? The difference between an artist and a craft person is that craftspeople make things that people use. And what they want is to know is, will the thing I'm making be something people will like and will use and will not think I stink? Right? So all the questions come down to that. I mean, A/B testing is really, is this the right answer, is that the right answer? All of our sort of upfront design researchy things are about how do people think about the problem? Or how should we take how they think about it and instantiate it in design, right? So most of all, I think all the questions come down to, is what we're doing good to work? That might mean, will it meet its business goals? It might mean, will it sell? It might mean, will it not blow up the world? I mean, whatever the level of success is, but will it help us be successful? And everything else is just a variation on that.
Okay. All right. What about, what people think about what we do? One question that I've been asked a few times. People realize that one of the things that make people, I don't like the word but like a product, is that it's fast. So, yes, we can measure and see if it's fast without users, but what's more important is how fast people think it is.
Right.
So the perceived quickness of the response of the product.
Right.
Is this something you see people are interested in, or do you think it again falls under the will people like this or use this?
Sure, but I think it's a really important one, which is, we get like the 3-click rule, which is of course nonsense, right? But someone said, we've got to make it faster to get there. We've got to make it less tedious, fewer steps to get there. And so someone said, how about a 3-click rule? And then the 3-click rule became, like some sort of god.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, how do we make sure that every step people takes them closer to where they need to go, and in a way that feels like progress at each step? Right, which is very different than 3 clicks, because it might be 5 clicks, but clear, easy clicks. We don't measure hard clicks versus simple clicks. We don't, measure, sure, it's all on one page, but maybe that page is really long and has a lot of questions on it. Is that better than a short one? I did some work on medical forms, and patients liked when it was one long form because they knew how big it was. Right? They didn't like not knowing how many more questions were coming. But other places where you need to ask a question and then ask a different question depending on the answer, well, you need to break it up. Yeah. And so if you've broken it up, they assumed that you were customizing to them in the way a human interview would. So even just the format of taking a bunch of medical questions and doing it as one big thing or many little ones told them something about the way you were interacting with them.
All right. Okay. What else do you want to ask me?
I want to ask you, we've been talking about methods and how we questions, and I sort of said it all comes back to one question and then teasing out what it means. But I also am interested, we have a huge, especially when you take all of UX, there's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of different things we can do. When you have talked to people, either within companies or in these interviews, do people tend to have a big repertoire of tools in their toolkit or a very small one?
Wow. My intuition says small one.
Yeah. That we find a tool that works, and we this is a nail, this is a hammer, and I'll just keep beating on it.
Either it works or that again, I'm going back to the questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy for us to be very successful as consultants or as in-house practitioners if we answer, one set of questions with, a set of limited methodologies or methods, and be successful. People will be happy, and we're not doing anything wrong. I think we are going to do better service if we, again, something I hate to say, get out of the box. But, think about other ways. Because the things we do, I don't know, they've been there for dozens of years, and nothing has changed, and we tend to, follow and do what works and not think too much about other ways to answer questions. And sometimes do, I think you mentioned it on the way to this room, sometimes combine different methods in the same session and do all kinds of things that would give us different angles and answering the same question.
Yeah, I think we don't triangulate nearly enough. And it seems to me that one of the great advantages of starting to build teams within companies is that you start to have someone who's really good at ethnographic interviewing and someone who's really good at card sorting, and you can develop specialties in the people, but as a team you have lots of options.
Yeah.
And then the process of deciding on how to run a project could be each person making a pitch, in effect, for why the thing that they do really well will be helpful. But the other side of that is knowing, let's say you are, none of us can do everything. So you have a set of things that you do well, a set of things you're tooled up to do, that you have the right tools for, a set of things that fit your personality, right? I understand quantitative, but you don't really want me doing it, right? We want Jeff Sorrow doing quantitative, right? So, but how do I know when it's time to call the person who really knows quant, and being aware enough of what question you're answering to know when it's outside of your immediate repertoire, so you can bring in what you need? I
think we have it. I don't know how many people use it. We have it in our community. We have the option to verify how good we are, or validate how good we are or wrong we are with choosing the right method for the question we're being asked. Maybe we should do it more. We should be even more open and ask the wise
Yeah.
ones. What do they know? What do they?
I mean,
What their experience is.
it's interesting because in market research, I don't know that much about it, but in my experience, the people who are the market researchers inside the company tend to really be coordinators. They tend to be people who phrase the question and then decide what technique they want to use and go find the company to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so if you're going to do conjoint, you go find people who are experts in that. If you're going to do surveys, you find someone who's expert in surveys. And I'm not sure that that's the greatest model where everything is outsourced, but the notion that someone on the project, someone on the team is thinking, what's the world out there? Maybe not just even UX, but a big world. What's the big world, and what would make this work? And let's get the right people in the room.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
So one of the worst things that can happen to me professionally is that a stakeholder,
Mm-hmm.
looks at study results that I'm making available and says that they are interesting.
Oh, and that sort of, interesting?
They just say it's interesting. I'm not even sure if it's interesting or interesting. I mean, to me that's a big failure.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make, especially user research results, how do you make sure that they're not just interesting but also actionable or perceived as actionable?
Well, I think we have to draw that line together. Whether we do it by going off in our corner and doing it, or whether we do it by doing workshops and bringing people together and helping them engage with what we've learned. But, when I do user research, I love doing user research. I love the process. I love the activity. I love everything about it. The part I love the best these days is the analysis phase,
Mm-hmm.
when you figure out what you've got. And I want to take you through that whole story. Right, I want to, like a typical academic paper, we start with the background, and we do the method, and then at the very end of the paper we get the conclusions, right? But this is business. We need to turn that around. We need to say, wow, we learned that this kind of user did this, and that might mean, and maybe we know it means one thing very particularly, or maybe we have a feeling that about what we think it is, but we don't want to just put it out there, so we might say this could mean, or maybe we don't know what it means, but we want to pose some questions for the team to engage with. So, to me, we don't do the research for academic knowledge. We do the research to try to better understand how what we do inside our bubble is going to work outside that bubble. And so, drawing that connection in some way. I mean, I think your expos do really well, because
Mm-hmm.
you basically put up the material,
Yeah.
and you invite people to sort of live with it. We call it, like rolling around in the data, right? And to begin to think about what that means. But also, doing that means letting go of it a little bit. Letting go of being the expert who's going to tell you exactly what. I started doing sketches for what I thought something needed to be done, whether it was out of user research or usability testing at NCI, and I would put these I did them in PowerPoint so they would seem very unthreatening, right? And I would put a big thing at the top that said, this is just an idea, it's not the exact words, it's just trying to show you visually what I mean, what I'm seeing. And at first it was like, you're designing, you're not a designer, you're designing. And then they realized that I wasn't trying to design, I was trying to communicate. And they would go, oh, but I would do it this way. And it's like, yes, now we've got them talking. And engaging with that idea. That this thing that we learned has an impact on the site that we're working on.
All right. These are all the questions I had for you. Do you want to ask me anything else? Last question?
Yeah, I'm interested in how successful you've been at getting non-research, non-usability, non-UX stakeholders to engage with the material. I mean, have the expos really worked?
Yeah, the expos, they caught like fire here at least. I've been getting feedback from other organizations that they started doing them as well, but I can testify about Google. It works like magic. People do them. A lot of teams do them. And I'm not exaggerating when I say hundreds of people attend these events, these expos, and people keep doing them.
Yeah.
And we also do another thing we do that wasn't in the article, I think. We now have a poster that is an empty poster for people to tell us, what else do you want to know about this?
Right.
And this is a smart way for us a tricky way to collect more research questions.
Right. So it's coming back to getting people to engage with the
Yes,
material.
definitely.
Engage with the questions and engage with the material. And I think it's about letting go of being experts.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people, when they attend that, they look at all the posters and the videos and everything, and they say, okay, interesting, and what's next? What do we do? What can we do? And we're like, well, it's up to us. It's not. We're not going to tell you what to do. Let's work on this together.
Let's do scenarios.
Yeah.
Let's do play acting. What's this? This is the story of what was out there. What's the story in here?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was fun.